Everything you've been told about self-love is a lie. It's a comfortable, marketable, and profoundly dangerous lie designed not to strengthen you, but to keep you soft, compliant, and perpetually dissatisfied. It has been packaged and sold to you as the highest form of self-respect, when in fact, it is the very thing that is making you weaker. I am Cassian. I am not a motivational speaker. I am a mindset architect. My work is not to give you fleeting platitudes that make you feel good for a moment. My work is to give you the tools, the blueprints, to rebuild your mind into a fortress, an inner citadel that cannot be breached by external chaos or internal turmoil. I am not here to teach you what to think, but how to think, using the timeless operating system of the Stoics. For years, I lived the life that modern culture defines as success. I was a pioneer in the tech industry, building companies from the ground up. I mastered the game of competition and accumulation. I had the wealth, the recognition, the visible markers of a life well lived. But inside, I was a house of cards. My internal world was a storm of chronic anxiety, reactive anger, and a hollow sense of emptiness that no amount of success could fill. I was a slave to the next market fluctuation, the next business deal, the next person's opinion of me. My self-love was contingent on my circumstances. When a market crash and a severe burnout stripped me of my external armor, I was left with nothing but the chaotic man I had become. It was in that crucible, that moment of utter collapse, that I stopped looking outward for solutions and began looking inward and backward, to the great thinkers who wrestled with the very same demons of the human condition 2,000 years ago. To Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who governed the most powerful empire on earth while battling his own melancholy. To Seneca, the statesman who navigated political treachery while writing about the nature of a tranquil mind. And to Epictetus, the slave who became one of history's most influential philosophers, teaching that the mind of a slave could be freer than that of his master. What they taught me was that the modern conception of self-love is an indulgence. It is a philosophy of comfort, of avoiding pain, of validating every fleeting emotion. The Stoic path is one of strength. It is a philosophy of discipline, of embracing voluntary hardship, and of building a character that is worthy of respect. Modern self-love teaches you to put a warm blanket on your weakness. Stoicism teaches you to transmute that weakness into strength. Today, we are going to dismantle 7 of the most brutal lies of this modern cult of comfort. We will replace them with 7 timeless truths that will serve as the foundation for your own inner fortress. As we go through them, I want you to engage with this process. Don't be a passive observer. In the comments below, tell me, which of these comfortable lies have you been telling yourself? The first step to freedom is admitting you are in a prison. This won't be easy. These truths will challenge you. They are supposed to. Real growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. It begins at the edge of your perceived limits. Let's begin. Let's begin with the foundational myth of the entire self-love industry, the one that serves as the basis for all the others. The myth is this: love yourself unconditionally. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? It's what you say to a child. It suggests a warm, all-encompassing acceptance of who you are, flaws and all. But you are not a child. You are an adult with agency and reason. And for an adult, this mantra, when misapplied, becomes a trap. It becomes the ultimate excuse for stagnation. It gives you permission to remain exactly as you are, to excuse your weaknesses, to forgive your lack of discipline, and to accept mediocrity in yourself without question. It allows you to say, I didn't keep my promise to myself today, but that's okay. I love myself unconditionally. This is not love. It is abdication of your responsibility to yourself. The brutal truth, the Stoic alternative, is this: respect is earned, even from yourself. True, unshakable self-worth is not a gift you give yourself. It is a consequence. It is the byproduct of watching yourself do the hard things. It is the quiet, internal nod of approval you feel after you've kept your word, faced a fear, or chosen the difficult path of discipline over the easy path of indulgence. Love without respect is hollow. It's a feeling. Respect is a verdict, and it must be rendered based on evidence. You are both the defendant and the judge. You cannot fool the court of your own mind. I once mentored a young man, a brilliant founder with a truly innovative idea. His company was bleeding money, and he was on the verge of collapse. When we first spoke, he was drowning in the language of modern self-love. He'd say, "I'm being gentle with myself during this tough time," or "I need to love myself through this failure." But what he was actually doing was avoiding the brutal reality of his situation. He was using self-love as a shield to avoid the terrifying but necessary work. Firing underperforming friends he had hired, admitting his initial strategy was flawed, and making deep, painful cuts to the budget. The change came not when he loved himself more, but when he decided he wanted to respect himself more. He decided to become a man who faced reality head-on. The process was agonizing for him, but with each hard decision, he was casting a vote for the man he wanted to be. His company eventually failed, but he did not. He emerged from the wreckage not with the empty mantra of unconditional love, but with the hard-won, undeniable evidence that he was a man who could face disaster with integrity. That self-respect is a currency that no bankruptcy can touch. How do you apply this? Start with the practice of the integrity mirror. At the end of each day, stand before the mirror and ask yourself one question. Did I do what I said I would do today? Not, did I feel good? Not, was I happy? But simply, did I honor my own word? Start small. Promise yourself you will wake up at the first alarm, with no snooze. Promise you will take a 10-minute walk. Promise you will read 10 pages of a book. Then, keep that promise. Each promise kept is a brick laid in the foundation of self-respect. You build a self you can be proud of, one small act of integrity at a time. This brings us to the core reflective questions. Are you loving a version of yourself that you don't actually respect? What one promise, however small, could you make and keep to yourself tomorrow to begin earning that respect? This isn't about self-flagellation. It's about understanding that you are capable of more, and that the highest form of self-love is holding yourself to a higher standard. As the Stoics taught, we must live in accordance with our nature, and our nature, as rational beings, is not to stagnate in passive acceptance, but to strive, to grow, and to become the architects of a virtuous character. The second lie is a subtle poison. It sounds so enlightened, so emotionally intelligent, that we rarely stop to question its corrosive effect on our resilience. The myth is this: all your feelings are valid. On the surface, this appears true. If you feel anger, then the neurological and physiological event of anger is indeed occurring. The feeling exists. But the culture has twisted this simple observation into a dangerous conclusion: that because a feeling exists, the story behind it must be true, and the actions inspired by it are therefore justified. This phrase is now used as a shield against reason. It's a conversation stopper. It allows us to elevate our emotional reaction above objective reality. I feel anxious. Therefore, the situation is threatening. I feel offended. Therefore, you are wrong. I feel hopeless. Therefore, my situation is hopeless. We treat our emotions not as internal weather patterns, but as infallible prophets. The Stoic truth is far more powerful and practical. Emotions are data, not commands. Your feelings are simply the first draft of a story, written by the most primitive, reactive part of your brain. They are an initial assessment, a flash report. Anger is data that a boundary may have been crossed. Fear is data that you perceive a threat to your safety or status. Envy is data that someone has something you desire. That is all it is. Data. It is not a command to act. It is not a verdict on reality. It is a notification that requires inspection by your higher self, by your rational mind, the logos. I learned this lesson the hard way in my years in the tech industry. The boardroom can be a brutal arena. In my younger days, I was ruled by my emotions. If a partner in a negotiation said something I perceived as disrespectful, I would feel a surge of anger. I believed that anger was valid. He had wronged me. My anger was the proof. I would let that anger command my response. I'd become cold, aggressive, and make impulsive decisions driven by ego, not by strategy. I burned bridges that cost me millions, all because I believed my feelings were not just data, but divine commands. The turning point in my career and in my life was when I learned to see that flash of anger not as a command to attack, but as a simple dashboard light. The light says, "Ego has been engaged." That's it. Now, the strategist, the rational mind, can take over. I can ask, is this person's comment relevant to the deal? Is reacting emotionally the most effective way to achieve my long-term goal? Or is it more powerful to remain calm, focused, and unperturbed? This shift from seeing emotion as a commander to seeing it as a consultant changed everything. You can implement this in your own life with a technique called the cognitive pause. The moment you feel a powerful negative emotion rising, anger, jealousy, anxiety, dread, do not act. Do not suppress it, which is equally useless. Instead, create a small space. Mentally step back and label the feeling. Say to yourself, "I am observing the sensation of anger arising in my body," or "This is the feeling of anxiety." This simple act of observation separates you from the emotion. You are no longer in the anger, you are the one watching the anger. In that space between the stimulus and your programmed reaction, you reclaim your power. You can now choose your response rather than being a puppet pulled by the strings of your limbic system. This leads to the crucial questions for your own reflection. How often do you allow your emotions to write checks that your rational mind has to cash later? What would change in your most difficult relationships or circumstances if you treated your next wave of frustration not as a fire alarm demanding a panicked reaction, but as a simple notification on your dashboard, waiting for calm, logical analysis? This is the essence of one of Epictetus's most profound teachings. It is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. The external event happens. The initial feeling, the impression arises. But the story we tell ourselves about it, the validation we grant that feeling, that is our judgment. And that is the only thing truly within our control. Now we arrive at a myth that has spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to making you comfortable, and in the process, making you fragile. The myth is this: self-care is avoiding discomfort. Look at what is sold under the banner of self-care today. Bubble baths, spa days, binge-watching television, comfort food, canceling plans to stay on the couch. The underlying message is that you are a fragile creature on the verge of breaking, and the way to care for yourself is to retreat from all forms of stress, challenge, and friction. It is a prescription for a smaller and smaller life, where your tolerance for any kind of hardship withers away from disuse. You are taught to build a sanctuary from the world, when you should be building a warrior within yourself. This brings me to an original insight I call the comfort paradox. The modern world operates on a deeply flawed assumption that the goal of a good life is the maximization of comfort and the elimination of pain. But this relentless pursuit of comfort creates its opposite. It creates profound psychological weakness. The more you insulate yourself from discomfort, the more your mind catastrophizes the slightest friction. A difficult conversation becomes a source of terror. A challenging project at work becomes an overwhelming burden. The normal, unavoidable hardships of life become traumas. The more comfort you seek, the less capable you are of handling discomfort, and the more you suffer when it inevitably arrives. True self-care is not building a softer couch. It is building a stronger mind and body. And this leads to the Stoic truth. Voluntary hardship is what builds character. The ancients knew that steel is forged in fire, not in a warm bath. A mind, a body, a spirit is no different. It is through deliberate, chosen engagement with difficulty that we expand our capacity for resilience. We don't wait for life to test us, we test ourselves on our own terms every single day. I had a mentee, a brilliant data scientist named Anna. She was technically gifted but completely paralyzed by a fear of public speaking. Her version of self-care was to meticulously avoid any situation where she might have to present her findings. She would let colleagues take credit for her work, turn down promotions, and keep herself small, all in the name of avoiding the discomfort of being in the spotlight. Her sanctuary was a prison. The real work began when we reframed self-care not as avoidance but as training. Her new self-care was to embrace voluntary hardship. She joined a local Toastmasters club, a public speaking group. Her first speech, she told me, was the most terrifying 2 minutes of her life. Her hands shook, her voice cracked, her mind went blank. It was pure, unadulterated discomfort. But she did it. And the next week, she did it again. It was still terrifying, but infinitesimally less so. She was voluntarily walking into the fire, and with each exposure, the fire had less power over her. Within a year, she was not only presenting her own work, but was sought after to lead major client presentations. She didn't just conquer a fear, she systematically built a new, more confident, more resilient version of herself. That is true self-care. You must become a practitioner of this in your own life. I call it micro-dosing discomfort. Don't start by climbing a mountain. Start by taking a cold shower for 30 seconds after your warm one. When you feel the instinct to take the elevator, take the stairs instead. When you least feel like exercising, put on your shoes and do it for just 10 minutes. Intentionally pick up a book that argues a viewpoint you disagree with and read it with an open mind. These are not punishments. They are controlled, voluntary exposures to the very forces you seek to avoid. They are training simulations for your soul, proving to yourself in small but undeniable ways that you are the kind of person who can withstand, who can endure, and who can grow from the friction of life. So, ask yourself this. Where in your life are you consistently choosing comfort over growth? What is one small, voluntary hardship you can introduce into your life this week to begin forging a stronger character? This is the essence of Seneca's practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. By practicing hardship when times are good, we inoculate our minds against the inevitable misfortunes of life. We do not pray for a lighter burden, we train for a stronger back. This next myth is one of the most insidious, as it chains you to a past that you cannot change, convincing you that your history is your destiny. The myth is this: your past defines you. We are told this in 1,000 different ways. We are products of our upbringing, prisoners of our past traumas, defined by our previous failures. This narrative, while often well-intentioned, is a life sentence of victimhood. It suggests that the most important and powerful parts of your story have already been written, and you are now merely living out the consequences. It creates a fixed identity based on events that are gone forever. It tells you, I am an anxious person because of what happened to me, or I can't succeed because of where I came from. This mindset turns your past into a cage. The Stoic truth liberates you from this prison instantly. Your response defines you. The past is inert. It is a collection of facts, of events that have no inherent power over you. The only thing that has power is the meaning you assign to those events right now, and the response you choose to build from them today. The Stoics understood this profoundly. The event itself is not what matters. What matters is the judgment you place upon it. You cannot change what happened, but you have absolute, total control over what you will do next. That is where your identity is forged, not in the blows you receive from fate, but in the way you rise after being struck. I have failed more times than most people have tried. In my early 30s, I poured 2 years of my life and every dollar I had into a tech startup that I was convinced would change the world. We had a brilliant team, a great product, but our timing was off. A larger competitor beat us to market, and the entire venture collapsed into a spectacular public failure. For months, I let that past define me. I am the man whose company failed. That was my identity. It was a heavy cloak of shame and regret. I avoided risks, doubted my own instincts, and replayed my mistakes endlessly. I was letting a dead event from the past dictate my present and poison my future. The shift came when I encountered Seneca, who wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." I realized I had a choice. The event, the failure, was a fact. But I could choose my response. Response 1 was to let it define me as a failure. Response 2 was to see it as the most expensive and valuable MBA I could ever receive. It had taught me about market timing, about scaling too quickly, about the importance of capital reserves. The failure was not the end of my story, it was my origin story. It was the friction that would polish the gem. I chose to respond by building my next company, this time armed with the brutal lessons of my past. That company succeeded beyond my wildest dreams, not in spite of my past failure, but because of it. The event did not define me. My response did. How can you apply this? Practice the art of narrative reframing. Take a significant failure or a painful event from your past that you feel defines you. Write it down. Then, underneath it, deliberately write a new story about it. Reframe it not as a story of victimhood, but as a story of training. That difficult childhood didn't break me, it taught me resilience. That painful breakup didn't ruin me, it taught me what I truly need in a partner and forced me to become self-reliant. Losing that job wasn't the end, it was the catalyst that pushed me to find a career that aligns with my purpose. You are not erasing the past. You are seizing control of its meaning. So, reflect on these questions. What story from your past are you allowing to define your present limitations? How could you reframe that exact same event as the source of your greatest strength? The Stoics taught the concept of amor fati, a love of one's fate. It doesn't mean you have to like the painful things that happen. It means you accept them as necessary, as part of the path. You don't just tolerate your past, you embrace it as the raw material from which you will forge your future character. The past is the clay. Your response is the sculptor's hand. We now come to a piece of advice that feels like a warm hug, but often serves to enable our worst instincts, keeping us stuck in cycles of mediocrity. The myth is this: be gentle with yourself, always. Again, the intention is good. It's a reaction against hypercriticism and self-loathing. But in its modern application, being gentle has become a code word for letting yourself off the hook. It's the voice that whispers, "You're tired, skip the gym. This is too hard, you should just quit. You failed, but it's okay. You don't need to try again." It's a philosophy of permanent convalescence, treating yourself like a fragile patient who can't handle any strain. When you are always gentle with yourself, you rob yourself of the opportunity to discover what you're truly capable of. You become a parent who spoils their child so thoroughly that the child never develops any strength, resilience, or character. The hard Stoic truth is that discipline is the highest form of self-love. Think about it. Who loves their child more? The parent who gives them candy for every meal, lets them skip school, and protects them from every challenge? Or the parent who ensures they eat nutritious food, insists on their education, and encourages them to face their fears? The first path is easier and provides momentary pleasure. The second path is difficult, requires discipline, and is an act of profound, genuine love, aimed at the child's long-term well-being. You must become the second type of parent to yourself. Discipline is not punishment. It is the deliberate cultivation of habits that serve your future self over the fleeting desires of your present self. It is choosing who you want to be over how you feel in this single moment. I remember when I first decided to rebuild my life after my burnout. One of the first commitments I made was to wake up at 5 a.m. every day to read, meditate, and exercise before the chaos of the day began. The first morning, the alarm went off and every cell in my body screamed for me to stay in the warm, comfortable bed. The voice of gentle self-love was there, whispering, "You're exhausted. You've been through so much. You deserve to rest. Start tomorrow." It was so seductive, but a stronger, quieter voice, the voice of discipline, said, "This is the first promise. If you break this one, you will break them all." The man you want to become gets out of bed. Forcing myself out of bed that morning was not an act of aggression against myself. It was an act of profound love for the future Cassian I was trying to build. It was a declaration that my long-term goals were more important than my short-term comfort. Every time I chose the discipline of waking up over the gentleness of the snooze button, I was casting a vote for that stronger self. You can begin this practice with one keystone habit. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Choose one single habit that you know will have a positive ripple effect. It could be a 15-minute walk every morning. It could be turning off all screens an hour before bed. It could be preparing a healthy lunch for the next day. The habit itself is less important than the practice of imposing a rule on yourself and following it. Your feelings will rebel. The voice of gentleness will plead for an exception, just this once. Your job is to be the loving, firm parent and say, "No. We are doing this because we love ourselves enough to want the best for our future." This leads to the reflective questions. In which area of your life are you using being gentle as an excuse to avoid the discipline you know you need? What is the one daily act of discipline that, if you performed it consistently, would be the greatest expression of love for your future self? The Stoics called this temperance, the mastery of self. It is one of the 4 cardinal virtues. It is not about deprivation for its own sake. It is about aligning your actions with your highest values, ensuring that you are not a slave to your own passing whims and appetites. That mastery is the truest and most powerful form of love you can ever give yourself. This next myth is perhaps the most pervasive and emotionally appealing of them all. It's plastered on coffee mugs, social media bios, and whispered as a mantra of ultimate acceptance. The myth is this: you're perfect as you are. Or its cousin, you are enough. This sentiment is intended to be a balm for the wounds of inadequacy that so many of us feel. But it is a dangerous anesthetic. It confuses your inherent worth as a human being with your current state of character and development. Yes, you have inherent worth. But are you perfect? Are you truly enough in your current state to achieve your highest potential? Of course not. To believe you are perfect as you are is to declare that the journey of growth is over. It is an endpoint. It is a declaration of stasis. It is the most elegant excuse for ceasing to strive, to learn, to improve. It mistakes potential for accomplishment. A block of marble has the potential to be a masterpiece, but it is not a masterpiece until the sculptor has done the hard work of chipping away everything that is unessential. This brings me to my second core insight for you today, which I call the sculptor's mindset. The modern self-love movement teaches you to see yourself as a finished statue in a museum, to be admired and accepted as is. If there are cracks or rough edges, we are told to simply love them as part of the piece. The Stoic, however, understands that we are not the statue, we are the sculptor. Our life, our character, is the raw block of marble. Our tools are our daily thoughts, habits, and actions. The work is never finished. Every day, we have the opportunity to pick up the hammer and chisel, to chip away at a vice, to smooth out a rough edge, to bring our character closer to the virtuous ideal we hold in our mind's eye. This is not a process of self-hatred for the current state of the marble. It is a process of profound love and respect for the masterpiece that is waiting to be revealed. This leads us to the Stoic truth. Worth is not a given, it is built. Your self-worth is a structure, and you are the architect and the builder. It is constructed through your actions. You don't find your value, you forge it. You don't discover your worth, you create it every day through disciplined effort and virtuous action. I saw this firsthand with a mentee who was deeply unhappy in his career. He was intelligent and capable, but he was coasting. He would tell himself, "I am enough," as a way to soothe the anxiety he felt about his own stagnation. He was treating the block of marble as if it were a finished work. Our work together began by shattering that illusion. I asked him, "Is this version of you truly enough for the man you know you could be?" He admitted it wasn't. We adopted the sculptor's mindset. He identified the excess stone he needed to chip away: procrastination, fear of failure, lack of specific skills. The chisel became his daily actions. He enrolled in an online course to build a new skill, dedicating 1 hour to it every evening. He started a small side project to apply that skill, even when he was afraid it would fail. He stopped admiring the block of marble and started sculpting. A year later, he was a different man, not because he had affirmed that he was enough, but because he had taken on the hard, daily work of becoming more. His self-worth wasn't a mantra anymore. It was a deep, quiet confidence born from accomplishment. How do you apply this? Stop affirming and start building. Identify one area of your life where you feel you are not enough: your health, your knowledge, your discipline, your relationships. Now identify one single daily action, a chisel strike, that would move you even 1 millimeter closer to your ideal in that area. Not "I will be healthy, but I will take a 20-minute walk today." Not "I will be more knowledgeable, but I will read for 15 minutes today." Let your actions be your affirmation. The worth you are seeking is not found in a mirror, but in the disciplined work of the sculptor's hands. And so I ask you to reflect. Where are you using the mantra, "I am enough," to avoid the difficult work of becoming more? If you are the sculptor, what is the first piece of excess stone you need to chip away tomorrow? The goal is not to reach a final, perfect state. The goal is to fall in love with the process of sculpting. The purpose of a human life is not to be a static object of admiration, but to be a dynamic force of creation, with your own character as your greatest work of art. We have arrived at the final and perhaps the grandest lie of the modern era. A lie that sets you on a frantic chase for a fleeting phantom, ensuring you are never truly at peace. The myth is this: happiness is the goal. Our entire culture is organized around this premise. Buy this car, it will make you happy. Get this promotion, then you'll be happy. Find the perfect partner, and you will achieve happiness. We are taught to treat happiness as an external prize to be won, a destination to be reached. This turns your life into a never-ending if-then equation. If I get X, then I will be happy. But as you have likely experienced, whenever you get X, the feeling of happiness is temporary. The goalpost moves. The new car gets a scratch, the promotion comes with more stress, and even the best relationships have friction. This pursuit of happiness is a hedonic treadmill, and it is the direct cause of so much of our anxiety and dissatisfaction. We are chasing a ghost. The profound and liberating truth of the Stoics is this: character is the goal. Happiness is the byproduct. The Stoics had a word for this: eudaimonia. It is often poorly translated as happiness. A better translation is human flourishing or a life worth living. For the Stoics, eudaimonia was not a feeling. It was not the giddy pleasure of a moment. It was the deep, unshakable contentment that comes from living a life of virtue and excellence, regardless of external circumstances. The goal is not to feel good, but to be good. The goal is to build an honorable, resilient, and virtuous character. When you make that your primary aim, a strange and wonderful thing happens. A deep and abiding sense of well-being, what we might call happiness, arises naturally as a consequence. Think of it like building a magnificent house. If you focus only on how you want to feel in the house, cozy, impressed, happy, you might cut corners. You might use cheap materials for the foundation because you're impatient to get to the decorating. The house might look good for a while, but it will not withstand the first storm. But if you focus on the character of the house, on building it with integrity, with the strongest foundation, the straightest walls, the most meticulous craftsmanship, the byproduct will be a house that is not only strong and resilient, but also one that gives you a profound sense of satisfaction and security for decades to come. Your character is that house. Focus on the quality of the building materials, your integrity, your discipline, your courage, your wisdom. We have now dismantled the 7 pillars of weak self-love. 1. We replaced love yourself unconditionally with respect is earned, even from yourself. 2. We threw out all your feelings are valid, for emotions are data, not commands. 3. We rejected self-care. Avoiding discomfort and embraced voluntary hardship builds character. 4. We broke the chains of your past defines you with the freedom of your response defines you. 5. We traded. Be gentle with yourself, always for the truth that discipline is the highest self-love. 6. We shattered the illusion of you, perfect as you are, with the power of worth is built, not given. 7. And finally, we ceased the futile chase of happiness is the goal to focus on the noble pursuit. Character is the goal. Happiness follows. Now I am issuing you a challenge. Knowledge without action is useless. I want you to move from being a spectator to being a practitioner. Look back at these 7 truths. Which one hit you the hardest? Which one exposed a weakness in your own mental operating system? I want you to drop the number of that truth in the comments below. Let's see which of these resonates most with this community. Then, here is your real mission. Pick that one truth and live by it for the next 7 days. Make it your central focus. If you chose number 3, introduce a small voluntary hardship each day. If you chose number 5, commit to 1 act of discipline every single day. If you chose number 2, practice the cognitive pause every time you feel a strong emotion. For 7 days, make it your practice. Then, I want you to come back to this video and report on your results in the comments. Let's build this community of iron minds together, sharing our struggles and our victories. Strength is not found in comfort. It is not given to you. It is not affirmed into existence. It is forged, day by day, in the fires of adversity and discipline. The path to an unbreakable mind is not a gentle stroll. It is a deliberate, challenging, and ultimately, the most rewarding construction project of your life. If you are done with the weakness of modern self-love and ready to start building real strength, subscribe to this channel. The blueprint has been laid. In my next video, I will reveal the daily Stoic practices you can use to turn these truths into unbreakable habits. The work is just beginning.